Time. Over the next 20 minutes now, I want to dive into how to put your EVP to work in a crisis or time of change. Fairly timely, I'm sure you'll agree. So I first want to start by saying they say true character is revealed under great pressure. So I want to start on a slightly silver lining / positive note by saying there's never been a better time to galvanize your people and put your employee value proposition to work, to really bond and bind the culture of your organization in a two-way value exchange that will stay with you as a legacy going forward. And it really is a special opportunity if it's handled correctly. So in the next 20 minutes, my job is to put some ideas and thoughts in your head, hopefully to make you think a little bit differently about the current situation and how to use employee value proposition. If it's just the start of a conversation, I welcome that. Please do connect. Happy to answer any questions afterwards and stay connected going forward. Okay, so very, very quickly, so we haven't got long. PH Creative is employer brand agency. We're calibrated especially to work with large global organizations with complex talent audiences. And at the moment, we're in direct contact with all of our clients, intimate, sort of sometimes daily conversation, and we're learning all of the time about how some of our corporate peers are dealing with the current situation as well, and sort of putting that back into our communities. So I can share some of that with you today. In terms of PH, the biggest aspect of our approach to employer brand and EVP is such that we don't believe that EVP should be designed just to be a magnet to make your organization look more attractive. And I want you to start thinking about it as more of a smart filter. We believe that EVP should be designed externally to repel more people than it compels, probably for the benefit of this 20 minutes. Think of it as the ability to galvanize our internal people whilst polarizing an external audience, so putting people to a decision externally, but pulling people together internally. We call that the give and get. And essentially, rather than a broadcast of strengths, benefits, and opportunities, we believe it should be a very clear two-way value exchange. Okay, so that's the sort of mentality and philosophy and approach that we're taking today. And now I want to dive into the value that I want to deliver, the main value that this webinar is focused on. I guess the first thing is the plan to navigate around the current crisis and challenge of COVID-19 is not your primary responsibility. The chances are it's a stakeholder, it's a partner that you're working very closely with at C-suite level and beyond. But the plan to navigate that is not your primary responsibility. Your primary responsibility actually is the employer-associate experience of navigating. That is your primary responsibility. So what it takes to overcome the crisis should be one of your primary focuses right now. So, looking at it very sort of black and white, there is a tension. Whenever there's a crisis such as COVID-19, the reality of the organization is there is a tension between what's best for the organization and what's best for the people within the organization. So, for example, the organization, for the good of the company and health, there might be layoffs, salary reductions, health and well-being challenges, which means typical health and well-being priorities might be have to be downgraded. New regulation and process to deal with. People working remotely in isolation, upheaval and change always comes with its complexities and challenges. Working in leaner teams, still having to produce, and then the general addition of more pressure from a productivity perspective. So that's the landscape, and that tension is very real, and that presents part of the biggest challenge. However, The reality of employee experience that you must identify and focus on is actually when you overlay those two things, what's best for the organization and what's best for the people within. Your job is to find that commonality, and this is where the power of your EVP lies. So the commonality of the three things that our people within an organization need, regardless of what it is, falls into three main buckets. The first one is a sense of purpose. The second one is a sense of impact. And the third one is a sense of belonging. The interesting thing right now is the bigger the obstacle, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the adversity that we face as an organization, the more potent your communications can become. Let me explain what I mean by that. Okay, so what the employees and associates need and respond to most during a crisis. So the sense of purpose. What is the purpose of the organization versus what's the purpose can the employees serve? So what is their role? What is their purpose in this? Sense of impact. What impact must the organization make to navigate successfully? What impact can employees make? So what's their contribution? And then finally, the sense of belonging. How can the organization prove employees belong here right now? And then how can employees prove that others belong here? So what's their contribution to make others feel like they belong? Okay, so these are some of the derivative root questions that we need to be answering now before we put our EVP to work. Now, as I say, the interesting thing here is what is all around us and what your company leaders are focusing as priority number one is facing into the adversity that you currently faced. And right now, there is certainly an increase in that adversity. You know, people are being asked to work harder, there's tougher conditions, there's constant pressure, continual change, less resources. Now, when people are asked to work under those conditions and the communication is dealt with in a certain way, it's remarkable how the sense that adversity, it's not a sense of adversity, it's the reality of increased adversity, is the biggest catalyst to evoking a sense of passion and pride. The biggest question that employees ask, and actually candidates ask before they join an organization, is do they have what it takes to thrive? If they don't know what it takes to thrive, they can't answer that question. So it's incredibly important that our communication during a crisis is very clear and spells that out. And if people can see what's required, they can be motivated to take on that challenge and then see evidence of success. Those are the critical ingredients to elicit an incredible amount of passion within the organization, an incredible amount of pride. You know, so there is a huge opportunity right now to galvanize your people together. Okay, so from an EVP perspective, you know, what is the value exchange? You know, what is the give and get that employees and associates can reliably work by and buy into at the moment? Our job is to bring that clarity. And there's three levels of story that we need to discover, lean into, and communicate during crisis. The first one is stories to educate. So let people have the facts so they know exactly what's going on, what changes. You know, they need to be educated with the reality of the new adversity that we're facing. This is important because in uncertain times, it's actually our job to bring a certain amount of certainty. Certainty and clarity and familiarity are key with communications, especially right now, because you will hold people's attention. They will have an elevated stock in the message, and it's the basics of what people need to move through a time of challenge and crisis. The second one is stories to motivate. Um, Motivate the contribution to the new adversity that we're facing. Um, so when people are galvanized and bonded together, a call to arms, there's a huge opportunity to rally the troops and bring people together, and get that contribution you're looking for towards what it takes to overcome the new adversity. Now, our job here is stories to motivate, and we can do that simply by a simple story structure, and but therefore, here's the current situation, but here's now what we need to move forward. Therefore, here's what we can expect on the other side. So give people a very clear idea of the future reality, what we're working towards. And now people have the information they need because they've had stories of education, and now we're starting to motivate our people to move forward as one team. Now, finally, the third aspect of story is stories to celebrate, overcoming new adversity. So when there are signs of people making the changes or taking the bit between their teeth and doing the things that you need them to do, displaying the behaviors and values and actions that you want people to take, reflect that back and give them social proof that if you follow our leadership, if you take the information we've given you and you're motivated towards making the impact because you believe in the purpose, we can all pull together and look at these examples of successes. And these successes don't have to be monumental. They can be the tiniest, smallest things that people can champion together. And that's where that sense of belonging will come from, especially if it's not just broadcasted from the brand, it's user generated and it's shared, and people are starting to find comfort in other people's successes and adopting what they've done. So they're the three stories that we need to look out for. So in a nutshell, employer brand communications during a crisis. Now, what we need to communicate is stories to educate, stories to motivate, and then stories to celebrate. How do we communicate? We need to be making sure that we have clarity and simplicity. We need to inject certainty and direction where we can. So control the controllables and be certain about the direction we're moving in and demonstrate leadership that people can trust. And the final one is transparency and honesty. Now, actually, transparency and honesty in a crisis may actually mean displaying elements of vulnerability. Believe me, you'll be rewarded for that, and you'll be shot down if people suspect that you're holding back here. So it depends how brave your organization is, but I urge you to be transparent and honest to the point of vulnerability. Those vulnerabilities give people an opportunity to step up to the plate and demonstrate leadership across the organization and galvanize people together to make the change that you're looking for. And finally, why do we communicate? Your people, your employees and associates are more than anything looking for that sense of purpose, impact, and belonging. Okay, so fair weather employer brands and EVPs, beware. So what do I mean by that? If your employer brand and EVP, when you look at it, it is a sunshine version of reality, and you're broadcasting marketing messages that are filled with the sunshine truth of strengths, benefits, and opportunities. At times of crisis, you risk having a cynical audience of employees and associates that will become more disengaged. They'll start looking elsewhere for their information, and in the absence of information they can trust, they'll start to fear the worst, and that's the last thing that you want. If you face into adversity and there's a call to arms, then actually adversity can be your biggest ally in this situation. So if you give a balanced view of reality plus authentic messaging, you can find you get much more buy-in and more engaged employees and associates as a result. Okay, so traditional ingredients to an EVP is typically strengths, benefits, and opportunities. But the essential missing ingredients are the harsh realities, certainly a lot of them right now, the weaknesses, the gaps, and the vulnerabilities. Um, but these all don't have to be negatives, because and I want to be clear about that, this isn't just about being balanced and being more honest. This is about being very open and clear and certain about what it takes to move from here to get to there. So our current reality versus the future reality we all want to get to. There's going to be some gulfs, there's going to be some gaps, there's going to be some weaknesses, and there's going to be some harsh realities of your employee experience in order to get there. But armed with the facts, with a good call to arms, your EVP can be put to work to great effect right now. So how does that show up in a brand? I'm going to show you a client example very quickly, hopefully to illustrate the point, possibly to evoke more questions, which I'm open to answering afterwards. So GVC, an online gaming and gambling organization, big retail contingent, share price hit right now. They're feeling some pain, and we're working to galvanize and bond their employees together. This is their employer brand for the good of entertainment, but their pillars, their EVPs are keep it real, do what's right, get involved, and bring it on. So I'm going to take one of the EVPs, bring it on, as an example. This is the give and get of the EVPs. So bring your character and you can just be yourself. Bring your ethics and you can trust your own judgment. Bring your energy and you can be in the mix right from the start. And bring your resilience and you can be bold. You can say, I'm going to use bring it on as an example, but you can see there, get involved, bring your energy, you can be in the mix from the start. What a great call to our arms in terms of making impact. But nevertheless, let's look at bring your resilience. So bring your resilience, you can be bold. At GVC, we like to challenge ourselves, the industry, and each other. So this is the default stock narrative for this EVP. And you can read there about this need for resilience, for highs and lows. We encourage you to be brave, question everything, do first and ask permission. The opportunities here are great for those who are bold enough to take them. So that's the stock narrative. But right now, if we look at how does that show up in the communications that we've discussed in the last few minutes. So brainstorming, we can see stories to motivate can come out of this EVP, because we're looking at character, ways of coping and supporting. We can bring clarity and share ways of doing that in a very branded GVC way that is dialing up the default narrative, but now it's putting it to work, and by doing so with this resilience and sharing how we're authentically supporting each other, it brings a sense of togetherness, collaboration, and feeds directly into a sense of belonging, but also stories to motivate. There could be really good examples of somebody showing resilience and making a real difference in the smallest of ways that have big ripples and make a difference and appreciated by the organization. That could be used, stories to celebrate impact. So this is a story about David Jones, how he brought his A game home, calling an audible, dealing with change. So this is very on brand. And then later on, this could be moved to more user-generated content, so less branded and more authentic. So hopefully that gives you a very quick, tangible example of an output. And then finally, there might be some branded things that you can send out that demonstrate that people need to look after themselves. You want them to feel more comfortable. You want them to be able to concentrate and get in the zone with their headphones or the sleeping mask. Hey, get some rest. And you can be creative about this, and you can put your spin, your branded spin on that in an authentic way, as long as it underpins the key messages. So that's 9:24. That's a whistle-stop tour of the thoughts on how to use your communications EVP in a crisis. If you remember nothing else from this talk, it would be what to communicate, stories to educate, motivate, and celebrate, how to communicate, clarity, simplicity, certainty and direction, transparency and honesty. Why do we communicate? A sense of purpose, impact, and belonging. If you like what you've heard today, I'm keeping our new book that was out this month. It's just hit bestseller. I'm very proud of it. We'll be giving away 5 books if you want to use that link, the Cutley link there. And I've actually kept it to $1 on Amazon, the Kindle version, for the next hour, just so I can share more of the value that's in this book. It's certainly not a money-making exercise if you like what you've heard. So please go and check that out. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Ask me any questions. I'd be delighted to carry on this conversation. And with that,